Hi guys, I'm Joshua Lopez from Widowmaker Studios and Immortal Guardian, and you're watching For Bass Players Only.
Hi everyone, John Liebman here. You're watching the #1 site for learning bass online, ForBassPlayersOnly.com, where I've taken the frustration out of learning bass so you can build confidence, have fun, and just enjoy playing music. Remember, it's not for everyone. It's ForBassPlayersOnly.com. We have a special guest this week. He is a music producer, songwriter, sound engineer, philanthropist, and multi-instrumentalist. And one of those multiple instruments just happens to be the bass. I'm talking about Josh Lopez. Hello, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's been a busy couple of months. I just got off tour about a month ago with Power Glove. We did East Coast, West Coast, and Canada for about 7 weeks, where I got to meet Tech 21. And coming back home, it's just been a grind of client after client after client trying to catch up to everybody.
Well, this is what you said you wanted, right? Client after client. Let's back up a little bit. I want to start on your Facebook profile. You say, I produce bands at Widowmaker Studios, play for several bands, and create content for a living. And there's a little smiley face after that. How about if you elaborate on that a little bit? Just tell the people who you are and what you do.
Hey guys, my name is Joshua Lopez. I am the owner and engineer of Widowmaker Studios. I grew up playing the guitar since I was 5 years old. And as I grew up, all the instruments kind of came to me because I just love music and I had musicians around me. So I picked up drums, I picked up bass, a little bit of piano, but my main focus is guitar, and then bass second. Now I play bass for Immortal Guardian and produce them. So I've had to take a stronger role in the bass community, trying to push the boundaries there and really kind of rediscover myself as a musician, because I played guitar for so many years and still continue to do so, but trying to see what can I bring to the bass world that other basses aren't doing. And pretty much that entails a very heavy, aggressive, progressive, and chunky bass tone. So that's kind of what I try to deliver in the bass world, seeing something that's a little more extreme. I actually play pick. I don't play finger unless the song calls for it, because we play a lot of power metal. There's a lot of arpeggios and just stuff that's just going up and down the neck, up and down the fretboard, Yeah. They give me a chord, and while they're playing chun 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 chun, I'm playing arpeggiating the chords and seeing like what my options are there. So it's been a fun journey in the bass world, but I think I'm making do and creating a little bit of waves.
I've interviewed about 800 bass players, and so many of them have the story. How'd you become a bass player? Well, I really wanted to play guitar, but the choice was you could play guitar and not be in the band, or you can play bass and be in the band. So a lot of them got into it somewhat reluctantly, and I think I'm picking up a little bit of that in you. Am I right?
Yeah,
the bass.
There definitely is that, producing a bunch of bands, everybody's got their guitar player, and, skill set aside, people aren't going to get rid of their musicians or anything, but it always happens that everybody needs a bassist. So on a local level, I was playing bass for other bands. And when I started producing Immortal Guardian, they are out of Vegas. I go to NAMM every year with them. And one year at NAMM, they needed the bassist, and I was there at the right time, the right place. They got asked to do a demo at a booth, and I was like, hey man, we got 30 minutes. I've heard your guys' song day after day. I know what the breakdowns are. I know what the chord progressions are. Let me go to my endorsement with Legator Guitars. I ran over, hey, can I borrow a bass for the session? Yeah, here you go. Let me go check you out. I'm there with headphones, you know what I mean? Okay, these are the parts, these are the parts. We had 2 songs, which are like 6-7 minute, epics, and power metal. And it turned out, and the end of that day, it was the last day of NAMM, they needed somebody to shoot the music video as well, because they had somebody lined up, but it didn't really work out. So the right place at the right time, I was able to do it. And when I did the music video, my AR for Legator guitars, he actually was like about to walk into his house an hour away from the convention. I'm like, hey, these guys need me to shoot this music video like in the next hour or two. And, it's either this or I'm going to play on a competitive brand. And he's like, nope, not going to have that. So he goes all the way to NAMM. Everybody's packing up. He goes to their booth, unpacks the bass that I'm going to be using, brings it to us to shoot the music video. And afterwards he's like, you're playing with this band, like I got you, we'll soup it up. We got you. I play for Fishman pickups. So he's like, we're going to take care of you. And, there was a little bit of pressure from everybody, and they had a tour. I've never toured before prior. 2.5 months after that NAMM 2020, they were going to have a 6-week tour with Power Glove, which we just finally did, rescheduled after reschedule. But I was like, oh my God, it's so much. Like, not only am I going to jump into this band, but we're about to get into tour 2.5 months later, 6 weeks, and I got to get ready for that. So it was a lot, but it was a challenge I was ready to take on. And I knew that joining this band, there was going to be a lot of eyes. My guitar player, phenomenal guitar player and keyboardist, he's known for playing them at the same time. So he's been on like MTV, and he's got all the endorsements, EMG, Kiesel, and, he's like the golden boy. So I knew that there was going to be a standard that I was going to have to meet to play with these guys. And it was just like so much, but I took the challenge. Little did I know COVID was going to hit. We were going to get some shutdowns, and I was going to have some more prep time. For the tour.
I was at that NAMM in January of 2020 also. That was and on the plane back. We were just starting to hear about it, and I guess there were some people on our plane, so we were a little concerned, but I didn't get COVID till like last month.
Oh, wow. See, and we had an album ready to go that we were working on for M Theory Records. And my guitar player, he's like, we're shut down. We can't tour. Let's write a new album.
Yeah.
So in 2-3 months time, we wrote an album during shutdown. And the biggest challenge was, I live in Texas. 2 of the guys live in Vegas, and our drummer lives in Montreal. Mm-hmm. So we're, all over the place, sending each other files back and forth, meeting after meeting, and getting everything done. Plus I still have to edit, mix, and get everything, packaged for the label, just to release, like 7 months later. We didn't release until 2021, but we turned it in August of 2020.
And so there's a lot of that happening. A lot of people under the very same circumstances and different countries, and sending files and not like being in a room together. You mentioned Legator a few times. I met those guys at a summer NAMM show a few years ago. We were staying at the same hotel, so we'd bump into them at breakfast every morning, and we'd see them all. Very, very nice guys. You mentioned Tech 21. You mentioned Fishman. Tell me a little more about your gear. Well, tell me about Tech 21, because that is I've never heard a negative word about the people or the company. The Sans amp, and what are you playing? What Tech 21 stuff?
Like in the studio, I'm a big gear nerd. I love dialing tone. That's kind of what I'm known for. Is just being the guy who knows how to twist the knobs and get it sitting in the right place in the mix. There's live is one thing, but in the mix is like a completely different beast. So right. I had been using the Sans amp rack unit, which I have over here, in my mixes already for a good while. And I would kind of go between that and the dark glass, and it's like an ongoing battle, like what works better. And I thought dark glass was the one, but I did a tour last summer with them. We did 6 weeks, Midwest and East. And it was cool, but I just noticed, from the day-to-day usage, just the falling short, and some things I didn't like. It kind of had this plasticky feeling. With the Fishmans, they're already pretty hot. They're already sculpted. That's one of the things that give them the edge. And every time I would put it through my Sans amp, I'm like, It's got more low end. It's got more clarity. It's got more clank. It just fits. And so I did another tour after that 6-week, a month later for 2 weeks, and I did my rack unit. And I was like, yes, this is what I want. But I was just like, I can't fly with this rack unit every time. It gets hard. So I was looking into getting the bass pedal, which I had already had the V1 and traded it for my rack unit because it's got like a mid frequency on it. So I have a number of endorsements. I play for different brands. I play for Neck Illusions, The String Source, right, Tessie Switch, KSR Amps, just to name a few. There's kind of a list of them. As I start working with more brands, producing content for them, showing my value, they all start to fall in line. And I was feeling a little confident. Tech 21 is just like, to me, the godfather of bass tone, all the way back to, Korn. You hear that fieldy, I come in a metal background, rock background, and you hear that clank and everybody's like, what is that? It's like, oh, it's the Sand Zap, so it turned out great. And, I'm already a big Tech 21 fan, and I couldn't ask for a better family of people.
It sounds like it fits right in. It sounds like you're very careful about the gear and the equipment that you choose. I want to ask you again about Fishman. Did those come in the Legator base, or did you have them put in?
Well, Legator for a bit, they were kind of like working with different brands. Fishman always being their main brand, but I'm a big junkie too. And Legator was like, hey, well, we're actually going to start kind of working with Fishman exclusively. And, our guitars are starting to come set up with Fishman's already. I'd really like for you to work with them so that we can kind of keep the whole family together. And in my head, Fishman's are already like reigning just because their technology is completely different. They don't wind up like regular pickups. I think they do 10 passes through, and then they actually do the voicing on the pickup itself. So what they're able to do is make a sound with their pickups, dial it in live. I believe they have it like hooked up as they're dialing in the tone via computer and stuff like that. And that, being a big nerd, just it captured me. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm able to get the sound that I want out of the box. And it has nothing to do with like those pickups or any other pickup brand. It's just in the modern way, Fishman's are making it even easier for you to get the desired tone without having all the extra gear.
Hey, I want to ask you about, you were saying, I play with a pick, I play with my fingers if I have to, but I want to talk about playing bass. As you know, ForBassPlayersOnly.com is an instruction site, and we have thousands of people from all over the world coming every day to learn how to play bass right here at ForBassPlayersOnly.com. So talking to you is an opportunity to ask you what advice you have for them, someone who wants to learn bass. And let me tell you that before I let you answer, most of the people that come to For Bass Players Only to learn bass just happen to be men in their 50s, 60s, 70s. They're not trying to be rock stars or set the world on fire. They love the music from when they were in high school or college. They want to play some classic rock riffs or some blues shuffles or maybe some walking bass lines and a little funk R&B, so for fun. And now they have a chance to do it, and that's why they're going. It's not only men. We get a fair bit of women too, but that's mostly who's coming to us. So now that I've sort of gave you some context, I'll let you answer the question. I'll ask it again. What advice do you have for somebody who wants to learn bass? What do you think is important for them?
I think the biggest advice I can give you, I've been playing for, since I was 5 years old, and I never stopped. Coming to bass, there are muscles that need to be developed. And that being said, I think people need to enjoy to live in the basics a little bit more before they start tackling on things a little harder. And the reason being is because depending on the way you're playing and your positions. There are different muscles in your hands that engage differently than guitar. With guitar, we're used to down picking, fast down picks. A lot of people develop that muscle wherever it may lie in your hands and what you're using. But the bass was something that when I was doing finger for some of the songs that needed that, I noticed I had some developing to do, some muscle development. And so I would sit there, putting on a metronome 2-3 minutes at a time and just getting solid with dow 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 dow, and then going on this hand, working going up dow 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 dow. There's all those different muscle engagements, and before you start tackling ba 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 bum ba 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 bum 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 bum, you gotta have muscle development, or else it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt when you're kind of going through there and you notice, like, I can get this, but you're still trying. And I feel like because a lot of people aren't spending the time to develop, especially when it's a new thing for you, but to develop that muscle engagement, just like lifting weights, you have to develop it. It has to grow. You have to have the strength just to keep up with playing bass. And I think once you start doing that, it starts to get easier. You get a bass line, and when you're jumping strings or doing more complex stuff, the development is there. It gets a lot easier to go to what you need. But I feel like a lot of people, they just want to jump into playing their favorite Megadeth songs or their favorite groove lines or bass lines and playing in pocket. But you really, really gotta make sure that, before you decide to sit down for an hour and jam, just spend 2 minutes, warming up and just develop that. You do that 3 times a week, maybe 2 times if that's all the time you have, and it will develop. You just got to put a little bit of that time into the basics, which everybody doesn't like to do. But if you spend that time, it will work out in the long run for you.
Well, the way I have it in my instruction, even my scales groove. No matter what you're playing in my curriculum, you groove. You play scales, chromatic runs, string crossings. It's all, why shouldn't we groove just because we're playing a scale? But before I let you jump in, I want to mention one other thing, because I think you gave a great answer. It was right on. But I also want to throw in the fact that, as we get older, our bodies are not quite the same as they used to be. So a lot of my students are dealing with things like arthritis and maybe tendinitis, movement disorders, other physical challenges. So I wonder if you can comment on that.
Yeah, actually, right after when we hit, I don't know the correlation between getting my shot or not, but I just started to notice that I was getting tendinitis. Everything was tensing up. I play a lot of fast stuff. I play a lot of shreddy stuff. If you check out my band Lavascio, it's very like Latin shreddy, almost like Marty Friedman meets Yngwie Malmsteen. And there's a lot of,
that would be a lot of notes.
There's a lot of that, sweeps and speed picking, and you gotta have that dialed in. And I started to get stiff, and I was waking up. I was noticing I was also sleeping like this, very tensed up, and I would wake up so tense, and I would play, and it would send a shock. It would send shocks. Like sometimes I'd be playing and be like, oh, so guys,
you're too young for that, man.
I guess just the playing nonstop and not giving my muscles a rest. That's another thing, is you need proper rest. And my guitar player for that band, he's a little bit older, and he had been dealing with the same things. And when we started, he would show me the exercises, and I'd kind of do them. But once it hit me, I was like, okay, we need to make sure we're doing our stretches. I put my hand against the wall. I do different turns. I spread out. I massage this. Sometimes people don't realize that when you're moving these, it actually comes all the way back here to your back. So when you massage this, you're actually massaging some of that. When you massage this, it's all working together. So don't forget to, with things that are feeling tight, like you're working out, you need to massage those muscles and make sure that there's recovery. There's also those finger stretches. You see, you put your little fingers in those rubber bands and you go like that. I'll sit on those. You know what I mean? You have to have proper care for your muscles because you're putting them through strain and stress, and you just need to make sure that you're keeping up with them just like an athlete would. You know, they work out all day. You hear these football players are taking ice baths and stuff like that. And that's a little extreme, but to some degree, we are getting older. We do have to pay attention to our bodies. And as you're doing that workout, you are going to feel burn. You are going to feel, you know, some stress because you're developing and working out that muscle. You just got to make sure that you're really keeping up with the recovery as well.
Is there anything else that's keeping you busy that you haven't already talked about?
So Immortal Guardian, my band that I play for, we are coming out with a new album. We have a new single, our second single dropping called Echoes. You might have already seen my playthrough of the first song we did, Ozona, on Tech 21.
Yeah,
that was the first one I did for them. And we're releasing that. And every month we have a single coming out, I believe, till our release, which is going to be 11/11, this November 11th. There's so much going on that it's hard to be excited for so much at one time. So I tell everybody, it'll be here tomorrow. You know, next year we have a tour, and to me, it's going to be here tomorrow. Be patient, you know, prepare as much as you can. But, you know, tomorrow comes faster than we think it does.
Yes, it does. I have one last question for you, Josh. I know you're a multi-instrumentalist, but I wanted to ask you, what would you be if you weren't a bass player? So I'll qualify that by saying, what would you be if you weren't a bass player, something outside of music?
Oh, that is a beautiful question because I am an electronic nerd. Since I was very, very young.
Really? I didn't pick that up at all.
It gets far. Okay. So I grew up playing, taking apart my Tonkas. By the time I was in middle school, I was taking apart my CD players. I grew up
like Tonka trucks?
Tonka trucks. Yeah.
You know where those come from?
Where do they come from?
Minnetonka, Minnesota.
Oh, wow.
That's where the name comes from. My mother says every unimportant thing in the world I have right up here in my head. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I used to play with Tonka toys. In the commercials, they would have an elephant stand on them to show how tough they were and how strong they were.
So I grew up a big nerd, and electronics always excited me. Growing up playing guitar, I think I was like in 6th grade. My grandpa was an electrician, and I remember having a knob on one of my guitars was broken, and my grandpa never had time. You know, he's always busy, and he said, you know, I had already been taking stuff apart and fixing things. I grew up a big retro gamer. I still collect Super Nintendo, Atari, Genesis. I have a huge collection of consoles, cartridges. I still collect to this day. And he goes, here's the gun, the soldering gun. I didn't even start with an iron. He goes, here's the big boy gun. Can you figure this out? I'm in 6th grade. I'm like, sure. So I grew up with a soldering iron in my hand since then, and I never put it down. I always was fixing this. My dad was a DJ, so I would be fixing cables.
So was mine.
Cables. Nice. He would, you know, buy all the cables, all the connections, and say, here you go. And I would make all his XLRs for him. Here I am you know, a freshman doing stuff like this, taking apart stuff. And then in the family, I was always the guy who fixed stuff. But as I started working out there with the studio, everybody's got a tube amp that needs tubes changed. Sometimes things messed up. Everybody's got a pedal. I started working on pedal diagrams, building a couple of my own pedals from tube screamers, boosts, little stuff like that. Currently, I'm kind of getting into the designing aspects. Hopefully something goes there. But also in 2015, being a big retro game nerd, I got into arcades. The thing about arcades is they're very, very old. Some of them older than me. They work with old technology like CRTs. And I started working on those even more. I've learned how a CRT works, how to replace chassis, how to fix chassis with capacitors, flybacks, and then, you know, you have the arcade hardware. And I just learned so much that even this year I've worked on over 20 cabinets. I'm even now contracted with some local arcades to go and fix their stuff because I'm very good at diagnosing things and figuring out the root of the problem. You know, whether it be a fuse, oh, well, that fuse is blown, we got a short somewhere in the chassis, there's a capacitor or that's not working, or whatever it is. I'm very good at figuring it out. There's always, like, especially in electronics, there's always a flow from beginning to end. And I know how to go through the path and figure out what's messed up and what's broken.
Well, Josh, this has been great. This has been really enjoyable. Thank you very much. Much luck and continued success to you. Josh Lopez, watch for him. He's going places. Not that he hasn't already gone places, but he's going further places. Thanks so much. I am John Liebman. You're watching the #1 site for learning bass online, ForBassPlayersOnly.com, where I've taken the frustration out of learning bass so you can build confidence, have fun, and just enjoy playing music. Remember, it's not for everyone. It's ForBassPlayersOnly.com. Thanks again to Josh Lopez. We'll see all of you next week. I'm John Liebman. Let's play bass.